I've got a professional advisor who looked after me for more than 30 years, and he'd been through a really difficult period in his private life. Poor chap was wrecked. Things went wrong. Family man, it all went belly up. And I knew he'd been through a bad, bad period in his life. I spoke with him. And he spoke to me about very private and very personal, intimate things on the telephone, and you couldn't help but feel sorry for him. And I said, "Was things that bad?" And he said, "It was so bad." And he said, "But you know the one thing that kept me together?" I said, "What was that?" He said, "My business." And I said, "So is business good?" He said, No. You see, he said, "Because I love it." Now this guy looked after me for 30 years, and I never heard him say he loved his business. And when he said that to me, it really, really struck a nerve. And when I finished the phone call with him, I couldn't help but put pen to paper and write to him and tell him just the effect it had on me. And I suggested, with such sincerity, that he should go out and tell his clients and tell his prospects just what he told me, that he loves doing what he does. 2 weeks later, he wrote to me, and he said he felt so awkward at first, saying, "I love what I do." That's what he just said. He's a decent, honest man who did his business real good. He said he felt awkward doing it. Of course, something we feel unusual. It's unusual for him to do that. But then he said when he got to do it, then he said he used to say, "I love it," and he smiled, and he used to sort of have a little giggle, like a nervous laugh. And he said, then I got used to it. And he said, and I love doing it. He didn't say business had grown enormously, but he loves telling people he loves doing it. People buy your passion and your love and your honesty. If you are those things, tell them. Treat your clients as prospects. Well, of course, why would I treat my clients as a prospect? I'll tell you why, because that's exactly what your competitor is doing. And I say talk about treat your clients as prospects. You know, we fight really hard to get a client. We'll do everything we can to win a client. We'll travel through the night, go early in the morning, we'll get our proposal ready and presentation together, we'll put on our best suit to win him as a client, and we've got him. Will we ignore him? No, of course we won't ignore him, because we're delighted to have him. But after a little while, human nature kicks in, and we take him for granted, and we're looking for the next one. Now, I know a lot of us wouldn't want to admit that, but we do. Because you know what? There's so many clients of ours right now are being courted by our competitors, because and your client is saying things like, "I haven't heard from him for a while." Now, when you call these clients, don't just ring up and say, "I thought I'd call and say hello." Don't do that. What a waste. Call him up with something useful. Try and think of what would he like to hear. Try and think of what could you do for him. I think about success in business, about trying to give something away to the other guy that's of benefit to him, that's of little or no cost to you. That's what successful selling is about, which I'll demonstrate to you in a minute. See if what you can give to the other guy as a benefit to him that costs you little or nothing. Now, you see, you're thinking on the right track when you do that, and he or she will notice. You're going to be thinking of his interests, not yours. And the more you think of his or her interest, the better chance you have of getting the result you have in mind. And by focusing his interest, up goes your price. And deservedly so, if you're going to deliver the product or the service as you're supposed to do. 50% of your business. I see loads of people, salespeople, are pitching for business and they're in line to win a major contract. And one of the objections they come across is the client will say, "Well, I've been using this other supplier for donkey's years and I really don't want to move." And you know what? You'd have to understand it. He's been with the supplier for donkey's years and he doesn't want to move. And an easy way to get past that, or one way to get past that, is very often to say, "Do you know what? If that's how you feel about it, if I were you, I wouldn't move either." And he's relaxed. He said, "But I'll tell you what I would like you to do. Just give me half of the business. Just for 3 months on a trial, on a test and measure. That's all I'm going to ask you to do. Hold on to the guy you've had for 25 years and give me another half. Give me just the half of it. Just for 90 days on a test and measure. And can I tell you what's going to happen?" He said, "Tell me." Well, first of all, I'm getting excited. He's going to ask me. He said, "What's going to happen?" So I tell you exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to work like a tiger to hold on to it. I'm going to work harder than ever I did in my life. If you're going to give me a trial, I know I'm on trial. So that I win the order at the end of the 90 days, or so it's continued. But you know something else is going to happen? He said, "What is going to happen?" He said, "If you tell the other guy that I'm here, his performance is going to improve. If you're going to send out a proposal or quotation, and you're expecting a decision by Wednesday, you've got to do something a little better than wait for the phone to ring. And you've got to do something better than call the guy up and say, 'I wonder what you're thinking.' It's really not difficult. But you know why he hasn't said yes? Is it your price? You know, some people might argue maybe it is his price. You haven't sold him. That's all. You haven't sold him. You haven't done a good enough job. That's all. And don't start cutting the price. That's going to be a shortcut for doing a real grotty job in the first place. Go back and start again. If you get another opportunity to go there, away you go. Start all over again and give him the presentation of your life. Will you be covering the same things you did before? If you do and you're telling the truth, he'll begin to believe you better than the first time. And also, it's almost inevitable. You'll add bits that you didn't add the first time. So when I'm going to call the guy after I've submitted a proposal or quotation, I'm not going to say, what were you thinking? I'm going to say, hey, before you make a final decision, there's something I want to show you. And I get back into the battle. Can I come and see you this afternoon? Before you make a now you might say, somebody's thinking, what if he did make a final decision? What's so bad about me going there and holding his hand and saying, I love him to pieces? What's so bad about saying, hey, welcome on board as a new client? And why take that risk? I have to assume that if he hasn't taken my hand off before now, that there's something going on in his mind. He's got doubts about different things, about the service, the benefits, the product, the suitability. But don't worry about the price. That's not the reason. The reason he's focusing on the price is that's the easy thing to measure. Because how can he measure all the promises you made? He can't measure them until you come on board. So the only thing he can see is the pound sign. So don't worry about the pound sign. Say, before you make a final decision, there's something I've got to show you. And what's that? You show him your presentation all over again. And when you go there next time, don't go back and ask him what was he thinking about, because you're going to start focusing on the one area of concern. Don't do that. Go back into the beginning, start all over, and give him what for. And tell him you'd love to have him as a client. Tell him you love your business. Tell him that you'd love to have him, and you'll move heaven and earth to back up everything you promised him.